I call the meeting to order. Would you please call the roll, Mr. Cusick?
Mrs. Best.
Present.
Mrs. Davis.
Present.
Mrs. Hudson is absent. Mrs. Lloyd.
Present.
Mr. Wilson.
Here. All right. At this time, let me introduce the people up here. On your far right is Board Member Kelly Davis. Next to her is Board Member Jennifer Best. Next to me here is Treasurer TJ Cusick. I'm Charlie Wilson, Board President this year. Next to me is our Superintendent, Dr. Trent Bowers. And on your far left over there is Board Member Amy Lloyd. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as it was distributed online on Thursday afternoon?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We approve the agenda. Does anyone have any changes, amendments, suggestions, discussion, questions? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Best.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes, motion passes. I understand there are no visitor comments tonight. Okay, we've got then a very, very important presentation with respect to the third phase of our master facilities plan. Mr. Banks?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share just a brief presentation that we are highlighting at all of our elementary PTA meetings throughout the district this fall. I've had the opportunity to attend 4 meetings and will attend 3 more this week, and we're just trying to get the word out of Phase 3 and what's to come for the district. Also would like to thank Corey for recording this presentation. For those in the community who don't attend elementary PTA, we'll be sure to put this on the website as well. If you recall, several years ago, the board started to tackle what we called the ABCs, and we did that by creating a community task force. And it's important to remind our community that it wasn't the district that selected those members of the task force, but it was the community that selected individuals to serve as part of that group. It was that committee that determined that not only did we have an aging facilities problem, but we also needed to balance enrollment in our high schools and make sure that we have capacity for all students. Those ABCs were solved by our community endorsing our plan and supporting it through a bond issue. And it was that bond issue that created these beautiful middle schools and really set a standard in Worthington for what a middle school experience should be like, and created a consistent standard throughout the district. It also created additional capacity for middle school. And as a result of moving the 6th graders to the middle school, we created additional capacity at the elementary school as well. And then the final step of that process was a feeder pattern committee that determined, with one change of Slate Hill Elementary, we were able to balance the high schools and really accomplish all 3 of those goals. More recently, we brought together a second task force, and we asked them to dig into our aging facilities issue. They also addressed the capacity as being a concern, but I highlighted there in orange the budget and the impact seem to be the overriding themes of the second task force. Just a reminder, this was a new group. There were just a few members that had served on the first task force, but for the most part, it was a new group of our community that reviewed the actions of the first task force and made an independent recommendation as to a path forward. This committee recommended that the project had great impact in our community, and therefore high schools were determined to be the target. As well, there was some unique opportunities with some debt that was coming off of the books, and there was a unique opportunity to maximize this project and take advantage of the circumstances with our budget. So again, same process, same great results. Have some new pictures here. Two of these were taken this morning, but as you can see in the top left corner, Thomas Worthington High School has now progressed to the second floor, and it's beginning to look a lot more like that picture in the top right. Down at the bottom, you will see the outdoor eating and learning addition that's proposed at Kilbourne High School, and then a picture in the bottom right of the new turf field that is near 270 and hopefully will be functional in just about 10 days. So we're really excited about that. The district again repeated the process and established a standard for our two comprehensive high schools, and now it's time for phase 3. With phase 3, it's obviously the most complicated because you have many buildings. You also are really charged with two tasks. First, you must establish what an elementary standard is for Worthington schools. So think portrait of a learner. It's time in 2024 that we create a portrait of an elementary school. What is it that Worthington wants for the future when we think about elementary schools? And then it comes down to solving a really complicated puzzle. And my job tonight is just to give you a couple aspects of that puzzle to get you thinking and help you get the word out that in 2024, our district's going to begin to dig into this puzzle. The first is enrollment. This chart may be hard for some of you to see, but if you take a look there, you will see that in Worthington, the enrollment of our elementary schools varies greatly. And if we were to talk about building a new school, Jeff Ebley tells me that the OFCC would prefer that that building be larger than some of our buildings. So the average is probably close to 500 when you build a new school. Part of that is efficiency, but for some of our schools in the district, that would be a change and would be quite a bit larger. Some of our neighboring districts get close to 600. So when we talk about solving this puzzle, one of the first things we have to determine is what is our tolerance for change in Worthington when it comes to size of an elementary school? How efficient would a school run, or how much more efficient would a school run if it was slightly larger? And what would the consequences be if we did increase the enrollment in one of these buildings? So enrollment is really the first piece of the puzzle. Second is renovate or replace. So once we establish a standard for elementary schools in the district, we have to determine if we can meet that standard by renovating the building. Obviously, some of our buildings are much newer than some of the other elementary schools, so it may be quite possible that we're able to reach that standard through renovation at many places. But the committee will have to dig into that. This chart is actually from the OFCC, and it highlights in bold schools that were evaluated several years ago. And their recommendation is any building that's over 66% in the renovation versus replace, the money should be spent towards replacing the building. So if you think of owning a $5,000 car and getting a quote from your mechanic for $3,300, if the OFCC was advising you with the building, they would say it's time to replace the car. If the repair costs were much less, then they would obviously say fix it, and you'd be able to get good use out of that building. So this chart is a little outdated, but it does help our elementary school personnel as well as our parents understand where their building fell on the past evaluation. And we're going to have those buildings reevaluated in 2024 so that we have new data. The next is neighborhoods. Worthington has committed to keeping our neighborhood schools together. I'm not aware of any school in Central Ohio that's had less change when it comes to boundaries. But if you talk about changing the size of an elementary school, it's likely that a boundary conversation will follow. And so again, how much change will be acceptable as we talk about this complicated puzzle and begin to work on our elementary schools and bringing those up to standard. The feeder pattern is another complication. We did make one minor change with Slate Hill moving from the Cardinals to the Wolves. They slid over there to blue, but for the most part, our feeder pattern has stayed very, very consistent, unlike many of our neighboring districts. And would any of our plan for phase 3 impact that feeder pattern, or would students still have that unique opportunity to attend high school with their elementary school classmates like we've been able to honor for many, many years? And then the last piece of the puzzle is how will we educate students during construction? And so I show this picture. One of our principals asked, hey, where's that picture? Like they thought we were actually building that building. But that's just an example of a district that built a building on current property and then would have the ability to educate students in the new building and bring students from an area elementary school into the old building while their site is being addressed. So again, not ideal, would obviously create a little bit of strain on traffic in this neighborhood. When you look at this neighborhood, it looks similar to, one of our elementary schools in that it has streets that pretty much go around the entire site. So there would be strain on traffic. There would be some adjustment for students that would be educated outside of their neighborhood or outside of their routine. Again, a question for our community is how much tolerance is there for this type of arrangement and as we deal with the growing pains. So in summary, we're very proud of our community's collective efforts for Phase 1 and Phase 2. In 2024, we must create a new elementary school standard. We must determine what we can do through renovations and replacements, and then we just need to prioritize our needs. So our goal in going out and speaking to elementary PTAs is just to have those in attendance spread that word so that people aren't caught off guard in 2024 when we begin to establish this new task force and dig into this puzzle. Any questions from the board?
Jennifer?
Have you started going to the PTAs yet?
Yeah, I've attended 4 meetings and have 3 scheduled this week, so.
And how have they gone as far as, questions, comments?
Yeah, that's a fair question. One of the first questions that came up and has been pretty consistent is when would this happen? And when you do the math, unless you had a first grader and you're in attendance at the PTA, it's likely that you may escape a lot of this. So it's a targeted audience, and it's probably those with younger children. So, but overall, they've gone very well, over 20 in attendance, I would say, on average. And my ask is usually for them to share it with 5 neighbors so that they know that this is coming and that they're aware of it.
And are you thinking 2024, you said, for a new task force? So winters, fall, are we thinking about that yet?
Well, certainly we want to begin to collect new data in 2024. We want our buildings to be reevaluated. We want to have updated enrollment projections, and we want to make sure that we have the facts. And then how we choose to segment the process really is yet to be determined. But it may be that we develop the standard first, and then we work on solving the puzzle, and maybe that we assess the buildings to see which ones are candidates for replacement and which ones are candidates for renovation. But there's several ways that we can divide the work, but I do believe it's important that we at least begin the work in 2024.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Kelly?
Those are my questions.
Okay. Amy?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Task force membership selection, I assume that hasn't begun at all.
No, not at all. And I assume that we'll follow the same process where we send invitations to community groups, neighborhoods, PTAs, organizations, and have them nominate someone to. This one's going to be far more complicated than the first 2.
Yeah, I would suggest, just a suggestion, that you give thought to figuring out a way to get to preschool parents who don't have any kids in school yet, but who are going to be heavily impacted. I don't have any idea how to do that exactly, but the preschools, I would take it's a different population, I think, that you want to have populating this task force than the first 2. And they're going to be harder to get to, but I think it's critically important. I wish I could tell you how to do it, but I have no idea how to do it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I would think about how to get people who don't even have kids in our school onto the task force.
I am at Sutter Park tomorrow evening, but
there's
point
one
well
place.
taken.
Yeah.
There might be, just on that note, there might be some opportunity to engage with some of our private preschools,
Right.
especially the ones that are, we've got a lot of them that are right embedded within our district. and maybe they
Yeah.
could help us with some of that, at least sharing information, and maybe you can early on engage some of those preschool
Right.
parents, because I think that's a great point that we really do need to work to do that.
Great.
And OSU daycare may be another place to pick up Worthington parents who are not yet in the district, but
Absolutely.
might be very invested in the new elementaries. Good luck.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thanks, and please keep us posted. Appreciate it. All right, at this time, we're ready for the second reading of our policy updates. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kelly.
So did we have any comments, Randy? Do we still have the policies that we reviewed during our last meeting and the ones that we said that we would recommend moving forward on, minus the ones that were tabled as a recommendation from the policy committee? And we're still looking to have further discussion on policy 9211. So aside from those, the ones that are marked on this chart that we received at the last meeting, if we didn't have any comment, then I don't think there's anything additional to add.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the board? And do we have any idea, not that I expect you to, when we might be taking up the policy that was deferred at the last board meeting?
The 9211, I don't. We need to have another policy committee
Okay.
meeting that we haven't scheduled yet.
All right, just a question.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. We'll be taking that up, voting on it later in the meeting. All right, at this time, we're ready for reports and announcements. Dr. Bowers.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. So I have a report this evening. We always start with our mission. The mission of Worthington Schools is to empower a community of learners who will change the world. You could have just clicked that.
Good luck.
I just want to change that. Okay. Thanks. Right, no, just click it off, thank you, guys. Okay, sorry about that. So we accomplish our mission through 4 vision statements. Our first is that we will engage each student with diverse opportunities to maximize every student's potential. My update today is that, as we know, that leaders in the high-tech manufacturing are making really historic investments in our Columbus region, which creates what we hope are thousands of good-paying jobs with great benefits and building products. So a degree or certificate in engineering technology is something that we want to encourage for our students as a path to a career in the semiconductor, biomanufacturing, gene therapy production, auto, electric vehicle, and fuel cell manufacturing, production, and much more. So with all that in mind, Worthington Schools high school students recently attended Engineering Technology Day at Columbus State to learn about the high-tech opportunities in our region. Students learned about robotics, automation, electrical and mechanical systems, clean room practices, and how to operate and maintain the world's most sophisticated machines. Columbus State faculty and our current students worked together. They tried programming, operating, and troubleshooting the processes, machines, technology, and systems that produce the goods we consume and rely on to make daily life possible. We are, as a school district, engaging in workforce development, and we want to make sure, we know that's a key for our region, and what we want to report is that this is just something that we're actively working to be a partner in to benefit our students and our families. And so I appreciate Ms. Adrian, Ms. Greenwald, Brian Genius making that happen. Our second update tonight is that we will provide a safe environment where every student can grow intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically. So guys, our hearts are broken by the unprecedented massacre of Israeli citizens by Hamas. As this conflict unfolds, we know there will be more casualties, including of innocent civilians in Gaza and Israel. We as a school district are here to support the members of our community who have family and friends in the region. We want to share that our thoughts are with you during this tragic time. The adults in our schools recognize this is a difficult topic to navigate, even as an adult, let alone as a child. In response, our school staff are working to support students through this issue, particularly those with family or ties to the region. Teachers and administrators have checked in with students whom they know or see are struggling. At the same time, students have sought out trusted staff members to work through their emotions and discuss their concerns. School counselors are making themselves available to offer guidance and a listening ear to students who are affected by these events. This support hopefully underscores Worthington's commitment to nurturing a diverse and inclusive community where every child is seen, valued, and heard. Our third vision statement is that we seek to provide consistent communication and promote dialogue with our community. Guys, we hope you're listening to the Worth the Journey podcast. Several weeks ago, the latest episode dropped. It's an episode that I would hope, or I would encourage everyone in our community to listen to. It features Tim Kite, is titled The Power of a Good Attitude in Difficult Situations. We spoke about Tim Kite at Convocation, but as a reminder, he's a 1971 graduate of Worthington High School, attended Colonial Hills Elementary School, grew up on River Glen Drive. And in this podcast, he shares a few of the stories of growing up in Worthington and also really some wisdom. So for me, when I listened to the episode, first, it gave me a reminder that today, to get my head right, and that I get to lead in Worthington. And so Tim's wisdom there is important to each of us. Second, I learned that the origin of event plus response equals outcome comes from Tim's reading of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which is an incredibly powerful narrative. And third, I learned that as a student at Colonial Hills, Tim was once on the safety patrol, but it didn't end well. So you want to listen to the episode to find out more there. And then fourth, just as an update to our community, we'll be responsible and transparent with community resources. Last week, we signed a letter of intent to allow realtors to begin negotiations to see if it's possible to work a deal to acquire the old Amazon, which was the old Sinise building before it was the old Amazon building, near our current transportation facility on Huntley Road. So this property would allow us to improve Worthington schools in a number of areas. It would create a new home for the grounds building, which is currently behind Evening Street, and allow that building to be torn down. Because of the proximity to the transportation facility, it will allow us to have sufficient bus parking space, a sufficient day room, meeting room space for transportation. It would allow space for a fuel tank installation underground if that becomes needed, and it would maintain vehicle maintenance space in the existing facility. It would allow us to consolidate general maintenance space from behind Linworth and our rental warehouse space all into one location, which would improve workspace and eliminate the warehouse lease cost. It would also allow centralizing some food service functions and allow for larger ordering to save dollars and allow participation in the federal diversion program that can save dollars by quantity ordering and storage of supplies for food service. There would even be some potential space for future growth, potential rental for WYB or others. So this letter of intent is not binding if we can't come to an agreement, but it's a tool to facilitate discussion of an agreement, and we're hopeful that that may happen here in the next few weeks. So with that, Dr. Wilson, that is my update tonight.
Thank you very much. And I'll reserve my comments about the letter of intent and the visitation until board committee reports, but I'm excited about the possibility. Mr. Cusick, would you please give a treasurer's report?
Certainly. Further item of trivia: before it was the old Amazon building and old Sinise building, it was an old ballroom building. I've had community members tell me they went dancing there in the second floor of the ballroom. So we'll have to find out what it was originally built for, I guess. Two items from me tonight. I feel like I talk about this every week, but in an interesting back and forth day, the Ohio House ultimately passed House Bill 187. Which seeks to alter the reappraisal process. It basically, in a nutshell, will bring down reappraisal this year. It's more complicated than that, but that's the end result. So that will go to the Senate. We're told not this week, but potentially next week, there could be a hearing. They may not be a hearing. Ultimately, at this point, timing is of most concern to us. We're concerned that if it doesn't pass soon or it passes at all, the county auditors won't be able to get tax bills out on time because everything will need recalibrated. Typically, those tax bills go out in December. From an income tax deduction perspective, a lot of people like to pay in December. But if we usually, the school district and all local governments really start collecting that money from the county in January and February. We've heard some county auditors say that could be March or April till they recalibrate and send bills out. And so that could become a cash flow issue for many local governments. So stay tuned. We'll see what the Senate does, if anything. And secondly, we're scheduled to receive a cyber grant from our insurance carrier this week related to Jeff Collett's work in this area. He's been spending a great deal of time working, including with the Ohio National Guard Cyber Reserve. And so our insurance carrier encourages those tactics and are providing us a grant around $20,000 to offset some of those costs. So we're excited. They're coming out this week. We'll get Jeff. I've told him he's going to take a picture with them. Unfortunately, local governments have been attacked recently, and these attacks are becoming more and more common. And so we appreciate Jeff's efforts in mitigating as much as possible these risks. That's all.
Thank you very much. I certainly didn't know that it was a ballroom dancing area at one time. Okay. All right. We're now ready for board committee reports and announcements. Anyone want to start?
I can start.
Sure.
I have several. It's been a busy week. Finance Committee, which is myself and Kelly, met with TJ this evening right before this meeting, and we kind of went over each section of the updated 5-year forecast in detail to make sure that we understood everything. And of course, there's much improvement since the last time we've seen it. And you'll be presenting at the second meeting in November, correct?
Correct.
And then Amy and Nikki will be meeting with Treasurer's Advisory Committee this week and get to go through that. So we're on our way with the updated forecast. I want to thank Angie very much for coming to Dublin Worthington Rotary last week. She talked about Profile of a Learner with a group of Rotarians that are really not part of the process, but they really enjoyed the discussion. It was a lot of kind of hands-on, getting a chance to ask questions, and it was a good opportunity for some input for us. So thank you, Angie. And Trent helped too, so thank you. Library trustee search is on. The library had 7 applicants. They're interviewing 4 people this week and next week. They will be voting on their recommendation mid-November. So our last meeting in November, we will be voting on their recommendation for trustee. I will by then have the applications and kind of an update on why they chose who they did. So that'll be the end of November. And last Tuesday, I was at a student feedback meeting at Worthington Kilbourne. It was a group of students that were chosen because they're taking new course offerings we have this year. It was students taking woodworking and the career mentorship. And the students had, of course, only good things to say about the new classes, something different and unique and hands-on. And they definitely are pleased that we added those. We asked a little bit about how they felt being at Kilbourne the week before with the threats, and they commented that they thought their teachers and coaches and all the staff there really helped make them feel safe. So that was good to hear from them. And they asked about why there's not hand sanitizer in every classroom, and that's because there's a shortage. I learned that too. And so we may have that issue in other buildings, and there's just a shortage of that. So That is pretty much what we talked about, and there's another student meeting tomorrow at Thomas Worthington that I will be there tomorrow morning. And AAPL tomorrow afternoon, so it's another busy week, so that's it for me.
Thank you very much. Kelly?
I always think like when people think it's just this meeting that we attend. And no, I don't have a lot to share. Jennifer and I attended, so here's something that wasn't on your list too, Jennifer, was the community coffee with Trent and Randy, and Emily was there and Vicky was there. We had a nice turnout, I think. Randy went over our district safety plan. It was a very productive conversation. I felt like there was good feedback from the community members that were present. And I always think that Randy is very thorough and super helpful when he's talking to community members about safety in our schools. Then on Wednesday, October 18th, I attended the Alliance meeting, and Angie was there, and Steve and Tom were there, and they talked about the strengthening, not additional, but strengthening our pathways to our curriculum for math and for early literacy. And so they just give such great presentations to community members. I've heard them during CLC a lot of times, just very engaging with the community member. And I dragged Caleb to that meeting, and so he was able to give feedback on the new pathway that is being offered at the high school level in conjunction with Algebra 2 or in place of Algebra 2. So that was very good. And then Angie reviewed Portrait of a Learner, which we have that on Wednesday of this week. And so just giving good feedback and just presenting to them, also a good turnout. So I appreciate that. Busy week coming up, so I'll have more to report on the 15th.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Very good job.
I just have two things. So I did attend the Community Relations Commission Undesign the Red Line event that they had on the 11th in the evening. I think, Jennifer, did you go to the one in the morning or no?
I was not.
Oh, okay. And
I was planning on it.
I know we had talked about kind
I
of
know, we talked
what all
about
was
it.
going on that day. I was just curious if you had gone, but so I was only able to go for a short while just to hear the beginning part of that presentation. But it was really great. There were a couple students who were there who also commented on the pieces that they did as part of that project. And so, yeah, it was just a really informative piece. I had an interesting discussion about whether we were part of the win-win in Worthington or and I explained that we had the 1968 land agreement that predated that. So anyways, I wanted to share that. And then I also did attend the Intel on Intel Part 2. I did not bring my notes from that, so I will just, I don't really have a lot to share right at this moment. A lot of the discussion was on, from what I remember, was on specifics related to municipalities and townships working together, who's kind of buying different pieces of land, and just the overall impact that that's going to have both around the Intel site and then the region, as if you've seen the other presentation, as they talk about, and how with Worthington being within 20 minutes of that site. And there was a question that was asked too about opportunities, much like we talked about earlier. Dr. Bowers talked about, potential opportunities for our students from education, but also opportunities for municipalities and communities to attract some of the businesses that might be working with big organizations like Intel. So that was kind of interesting too, and how we may have someone land here in Worthington, which would be amazing. So, but I will look back through my notes if there's anything additional I wanted to share, but both were really good presentations, and that was a very busy day. I know there were multiple things going on. So anyways, that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good presentation. I just have a couple of things. First of all, to follow up on what Dr. Bowers was talking about with respect to the Amazon building, and I'm not going to speak for Jennifer, but you're welcome to chirp in. The facility committee, which we already reported on this, did go and tour that and the Amazon building and the old, or the current transportation building as well. I think Mr. Ebley, for that was a great field trip. But I came away from that thinking that assuming the finances work out, what a phenomenal opportunity for the district, and what really difficult situation our transportation department is currently operating under, that we've just outgrown it. There's not much space there. And the opportunity to get the maintenance facility off the Evening Street, Thomas Worthington grounds there, where that building is in such bad shape. They have literally outdoor gutters inside the building because the building leaks so much they've got to collect the water that's coming into the building to get it out of the building. But I think if the finances work right, I think it's just a phenomenal opportunity. I don't know if you want to add anything.
I'll just say I agree with what you say and what Trent said. There's just so many opportunities there to bring in rental spaces from other places, to not have that maintenance building behind Evening Street that's falling apart, to help. I didn't realize our bus garage, how overcrowded it was, and there's not even room for another bus. So
Yep.
brings lots of value to us.
And I mean, the space is so small that the administrators can't even meet with all the bus drivers. There's just no place for them to meet, so they have to meet in shifts. We're in dire need of doing something there. So I think this is an exciting opportunity. And then secondly, to kind of follow up on what Amy was talking about too, I did go to the tour at the library last week. Or actually, I think it might have been the week before. It was about a week ago. Glenn and Sweeney did a great job of giving us a tour of that exhibit that is at the old Worthington Library. And once again, it ends, I believe, October 31st. And I would urge anyone who hasn't seen it yet to go see it. And to have to brag about our students, the students at Linworth that we honored last week did a phenomenal job. So it's not just the national exhibit that's going around. We've actually got a special Worthington one. So that was a phenomenal and moving and frankly very emotional experience, which then led into Glenn and Sweeney facilitated a big table talk immediately after it, and that was such a powerful moving experience for many of the people who were on the tour that she did a great job facilitating that, and it was just it was a full and complete 3 hours, but it was well worth the time. But I would urge anybody in the area of the Old Worthington Library to stop by and see at least what our students did, because they did a great job. That's all I have. If anyone else? If not, we're ready for actions recommended by the treasurer, Mr. Cusick.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the October 9th meeting as presented in enclosure E1.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of October 9th. Any questions, comments, discussion? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Best.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, we're now ready for the consent agenda, the personnel consent agenda. Dr. Bowers.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda. That's items F2 through F9. Again, I'd like to recommend the Board of Education approve items F2 through F9, please.
So
Yeah.
moved. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Second.
We got a motion and a second I'll state the motion now that we approve the consent agenda as recommended by the superintendent. Any questions, comments? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lloyd.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Best.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Now we're ready for actions recommended by the superintendent, new business. Dr. Bowers.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education accept the donations from the individuals and organizations listed on item G1 of our agenda. Item G1, please.
May I have a motion to approve to accept the donations that are listed on the agenda in section G.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the acceptance of the donations listed in section G of the agenda. Any questions or comments? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, at this time, we're ready for actions recommended by the Board of Education. The first one is the Board of Revision Representative for the year 2024. May I have a motion that we authorize the law firm of Rich and Gillis to represent the district during the calendar year 2024 in any matters related to property valuation and taxation.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we authorize the law firm to represent us. Any questions or comments? I guess I would just like to make one, just to make it clear that it has never been our practice, and I don't think we have any anticipation of it being our practice, that we challenge the assessed value of occupied homes that are in our district. Is that correct?
Correct. We, not only does Rich Gillis defend us when those properties are challenged, but we will review and challenge commercial, industrial, and income-producing properties, but we don't challenge owner-occupied residential.
And of course, as we all know, there's a big impact to other residents in the district if evaluations are too small, because the way property tax school funding works in Ohio, we get a fixed amount of dollars. It really doesn't have a direct impact as such on us, but it certainly impacts, because we get a fixed amount of dollars once we pass a levy, but it impacts the rest of our residents. So if one piece of property is greatly undervalued, that raises everybody else's taxes. And so I think it's critically important that we do this. And in my 17 years on the board, I think the law firm we've used the same law firm, and I think they've done an excellent job. Again, basically, at one level, not protecting the board as such or our finances, but protecting all our homeowners so that they don't have to pay higher taxes as a result of valuations of property. Any other comments? All right. Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes. Okay, at this time, as we saw in the second reading of the policy changes, I would at this time entertain a motion to approve the policy changes that we had the first reading for at the October 9th meeting and the second reading earlier in this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the policy updates recommended by Neola. Any questions, comments, discussion? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
All right. That's the last of our action items. Are there any questions, concerns, requests, comments by any board member? Okay, none of us have any. So we can move on to the calendar. Point of personal privilege here. There's one thing I do want to say about the calendar. It lists all the board meetings that I will be a board member of through the rest of my term. So it's kind of a happy but also sad moment. So the board meetings, again, to emphasize what I did at the last board meeting, our next board meeting will not be on Monday night. It will be on Wednesday night because the Capitol Conference is on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And there are a lot of activities going on Monday night, our normal time, so that's not a good time to hold a board meeting. So it'll be on Wednesday, then just 12 days later, the Monday after the Michigan game, I believe. I got that right? Yeah. We will be meeting again at 6:30 regular time, and that as was mentioned by Jennifer earlier in the meeting, we will be receiving a presentation of the 5-year forecast. And then my final board meeting will be in December. We only have one board meeting in December. It'll be our regular time, second Monday of the month. Any questions, comments about calendar? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn the meeting. That is not a debatable motion. So, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Best,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Motion passes. We are adjourned.